Hello, this is Math Kimchi, and in this video, I'll be explaining how I developed and deployed a homepage in Rust. So, you're looking at my homepage. It can be found at www.mathkimchi.org, and you can see it as a navigation bar and a hero page or whatever, and then a list of projects, and then a footer, and then there's a bunch of other pages that are not too different. So to start with, how did I make this in Rust? I used a framework called Yew, spelled Y-E-W, and this pretty much allows you to create HTML pages in Rust, and it's actually pretty cool. So you can see there they have this HTML macro where there's syntax very similar to HTML, but of course it's not exactly the same because it has more features it needs to account for, and it allows for custom components which can be written in two basic ways. Let's see. All right. So the one I used for my website is the function component way, and this one it takes in either nothing or some properties and then outputs an HTML element, and you can see this function is called homepage, and so you're able to call this component in a different HTML macro like so, which is pretty cool. And let's see. Yeah, you're currently looking at the router, which I will get into later. But yeah, like pretty much everything is written in Rust. There's a few little things like the target.html and then some configuration stuff, but the actual source code is written in Rust. And yeah, to get started with you have to get trunk, and I think you get that by running cargo install trunk, and if you're on NixOS, you have to do nix shell -p trunk, or just get it on in your config.nixos or whatever. And you also have to specify the target to be WASM, and the code for that is like so. And without that, it doesn't really run. And once you have that, you can run something called a command trunk serve, and right now I just have it make watch, but that's the same thing as trunk serve. And it says here I can visit localhost at the port 8080 or all the equivalents, and you can see, yeah, this is running locally right now. And if I were to change something like let's see, this is the home page. So if I change the hero to be hi, I'm Alvin Kim, and when I save, it should automatically reload. So you can see every time you save, Trunk is watching, and it automatically reloads. So that's pretty convenient for developing. I'm gonna undo that. And yeah, so with you are able to define your own components, and as I alluded to earlier, there is a way to do this without function components, and that's like through structs, and you have to implement the component yourself. But for something as simple as a homepage or a portfolio website, I found that I didn't really need to go that complicated. So I just am using this shorthand. And so you're able to easily reuse code. You can see I defined page base here as an example of how you can reuse your code, and this is used by all of the basic pages. So these are empty elements, and that's just like a syntax thing, because you're not allowed to have multiple elements. You need to have a single element, and everything else as a child of that. That's just a U syntax thing that doesn't really matter. But you can see how every basic page has a nav bar, and then the main content, and then a footer. And if you actually go back to my website, you can see the home page has this format. It's a nav bar, and then all this is the main content, and then the footer. And the projects is the same: main content, footer, and nav bar. And if you look at a specific project, that's also the same. And yeah, categories too. So yeah, that's pretty useful. So you don't need to repeat as much boilerplate. And yeah, I'm not gonna go over the very specifics of U as a framework. Like, I'm not gonna explain like how to do children inside of functional components, because there are better resources if you're looking for a basic tutorial in U. And I want to go over the higher level details of, once you do have a U page, how would you deploy it. So yeah. But I will mention the router in here, and this is the way you set up multiple pages, because technically, if you see, this is the dist directory is where everything is being generated right now. So when you actually are deploying your website, everything in this directory will be deployed. And you can see that despite having a bunch of pages, there's only one HTML page that's being generated, and that's because every other page is being routed by this one page to its proper place, and that is being done by the browser router. And to do that, you need to use urouter. And there's also very good resources on how to do that as well. But you can see kind of the overview of how this routes different pages to actual components that I define. For example, if you go to a page with the format project / and then some thing afterwards, then it will forward you to the root project, and that itself is this component. And the last thing I want to really touch on for the router is, if you're going to be deploying this for GitHub, for GitHub pages, then it actually doesn't really work unless you tweak some setting in GitHub pages. But I found that the simplest way for me is to just copy the index.html into the 404 page, because if I don't have this, then if you were to try to visit the base URL / project, then it would forward you directly to the page not found 404.html, instead of trying to send you to index.html and seeing if the index.html could route you. And so by copying the index.html into the 404.html, now every time GitHub tries to forward you, GitHub thinks the page isn't found. It actually ends up loading the index.html anyways, which then would route you to the proper page. And yeah, that's just worth mentioning if you want to do a project like this with GitHub pages. And yeah, for the projects, instead of, you can see how every single project has a pretty similar formula or template, I guess you could call it, where it's the name of the project and then a video and then a link to the GitHub source code, and then a list of categories that it belongs to. And as a developer, you should try to not repeat yourself That's the DRY principle, don't repeat yourself. And the way I did that is by having a JSON list of all the projects I want to display. So for example, let's just look at Java sockets game. So in here, there's a list, a JSON list consisting of JSON objects, and each object in that list represents a separate project, which should have a separate page. And in that, you can add all of these things to display, such as the name, which is here, and then the YouTube embed, which allows this page or this YouTube video to be played, and then the synopsis, which actually isn't shown on this page, but if you look at a project list, then that's where it's shown, as well as a link to the source code, and then all the categories it belongs to. And this is useful because now, instead of having to copy a template and paste it, only changing a few details like the name and the specific embed link, you're able to just modify this JSON file and everything automatically updates. And the way I did this is by having Surday JSON to first. So I first get the. I think. Okay, so. This include string macro gets evaluated to the contents of whatever path is inside of it. So when this is being compiled, this actually gets turned into this entire content. And so whenever in the code you, for example, run debug projects data string, then that should be run. So I think if we look at the console, we should be able to find, yeah, this was debugged from this line over here, and the contents of that is literally just the string from this file. And so using Surday, we can easily parse this into like a custom object, a custom struct. In my case, I'm storing the list of categories as well as the list of projects, and each project is represented by a name, which is a string, and an optional YouTube embed link, and then a synopsis and an optional link, and then a vector of strings for the categories. And so in the actual, let's see, components, for example, you can take in the project you want to display, and then you can access all of the various fields of that property. So in this case, the properties consist of only the project. So in this project, you can access its category, and then you can, in here, I'm iterating through every single category and then turning it into a HTML component, and then combining all of them, and then later I use that to display all the categories that each project belongs to. And similarly, you display the project's name, the project synopsis, and this specific component, the project item, corresponds to each of these things, each of these items that in the list of projects that you can click onto. And you can see how it's relatively easy to not repeat yourself with this system. And I want to look at an example with an optional field. Let's see. It's probably here. So for example, in here you can check whether or not the YouTube embed exists or doesn't exist. And if it does exist, that's good. You're just able to create a corresponding HTML element that you can use later. And otherwise, that's also fine. You can just give an empty HTML element. And the same thing with the GitHub link. So in case the link does not exist, you just don't have to say anything. But if you wanted to actually have a message like, sorry, but we're not able to find a YouTube link, then let's take the homepage, for example. Right now there's no YouTube embed for this one, because I'm making it right now. But if you go over to the JSON, you can see I just don't specify the YouTube embed for the Math Kimchi homepage project, and so it's just not being displayed. And I'll just show you, if I did change it to be the same embed as the orthogonal projection link, then you can see that the orthogonal projection video pops up here. I'm gonna undo that. But if instead of just displaying nothing, I wanted to display a message that said, sorry, there is no video for, and actually I'm gonna so now you can see, oops, it actually has some actual content instead. In this case, it's saying there is no video for the Math Kimchi homepage project. And that's just an example of how flexible you can make this. So yeah, I mean, I myself did not feel super limited by you, although some things with the CSS, you can't really manipulate it with you. And I didn't really need to play around with that because I'm just displaying like static content. But in case you had a project that worked more with CSS, I think you would be best off using another crate on top of you that specializes in CSS. But I found that wasn't really necessary for my use case, so I haven't done that. And let's see, the cargo.toml is pretty standard. I'm just using the U stuff and then the Serde stuff to parse the JSON, and I'm also using gloo, I guess it's pronounced glue, for debugging, and it's pretty useful because it allows you to debug at different, I guess, danger levels to the JavaScript console. So I like this one. And there's also a trunk.toml that you might want to use, and in here you can change the way trunk tries to build your project. So one thing you can change is the dist directory. So if that was docs, then under this, all of this would be inside, for example, docs/cname. And then there's also the target field, and by changing that, you change which HTML page that trunk looks for in order to generate this index.html for like the final build. And in the target.html, you don't actually have content. You just have things for like the head. So you can have the favicon and the title, and these are like trunk specific things. By having the data-trunk, when trunk is building your project, it actually recognizes this. And for example, let's look at the buddhabrot.png. Because I have this line here, when trunk builds, it copies the image from resource/buddhabrot.png into the final build file. And that's useful because that does it for when you're just developing and it's reloading on its own, as well as for when you're building for production or deployment. And yeah, this is the best way I found of doing this. Although I tried to have some hooks into trunk.toml, because there's a lot more settings you can edit. But I just found that for most use cases, there's just other ways and better ways of doing whatever you want to do. And let's see. Yeah, once you have an actual GitHub page, then, or once you have an actual page that runs locally, you can deploy it using GitHub pages. And the way I decided to do that is with GitHub action. So every time the main branch is updated, I run everything here. And to go over the high level of what this does is it checks out from the main branch, and then it sets up trunk. You don't need to set up cargo, because I guess every single, I don't know, GitHub machine comes with comes with cargo now. So I think a few years ago there was something like actions / Rust setup or something like that, but you don't need that anymore. But if you're doing it for trunk, you still have to run rust up target add wasm 32 -unknown. If you don't have this, then the trunk build fails. And then in my case, I'm running a custom command for the actual build. But the only reason why I'm doing that is because I'm copying the index into 404, as I explained earlier. But otherwise, the main thing is just running trunk build release. That's where all the actual building is being done. And then, so this was the setup, and this was the build, and this is for deployment. And the way I've seen other people do this is they have a GitHub pages branch that only contains the contents of this directory. And I was trying to do that, but I couldn't really get it to work, or at least not in the way I wanted it to work. And so I just decided to upload directly to GitHub pages via these two actions. And if you want to do it this way, so if you want to do the actions / deploy pages, then you have to set up the permissions to have write for pages and ID token, as well as setting up an environment. And this has to be the same ID as the one for the GitHub deployment. And once you have this YAML page or YAML file set up, then you have to go into settings, and I hope there's no sensitive information here. And then you go to pages inside of settings, and you change your source from deploy from a branch to GitHub actions. And then once you do that, everything should be set up. And also you can see here, it says my site is live at this link. Even though by default, when you do something like this, when you use GitHub Pages, it by default creates a page at mathkimchi.github.io, and for a different user, it would do it for username.github.io, and that's if you have the repository in the same format, because this is I guess a special repository name that by default it recognizes, oh, you're trying to create a GitHub page. But right now I set it up so my thing redirects to a custom domain, and yeah, you can see that here, and you need to set that up separately as well. But yeah, that was the main overview of the most important features, as well as some of the things I learned as I was working on this. And if you're interested, if you look at the repository for this, it should be public. You can look at the devlog, which goes into my process with more detail. So if you are trying to make your own website similar to mine and you get stuck, then hopefully this devlog contains useful information to help you. But that's about it for this video. So yeah, see ya.